Hello, my friends. It's me, God's comic Brad Stine, and this is Brad Stine Has Issues, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. You know what? I have got such a great guest on this week. Wait till you get a load of this guy. His name, Kelly Shackelford, who's he with? First Liberty Institute, which we have partnered with to help get the word out as to what they stand for. They have taken on religious liberty cases pro bono because they make their way through donations and sponsors and so forth to defend Christians and religious liberties throughout the world, but certainly in the United States. They are one of the top in their game. Some of the cases they've adjudicated and won, you'll be familiar with, and you're about to hear who that is as we move into the interview with Kelly Shackelford. But until then, you need to know something. If you are brand new to Brad Stine Has Issues, we have ways of seeing through your computer and phone and looking at you. So I'm looking at you right now. I see Ted, and I see Mary, and I see Jimbo, and I see Zippity, and I say, oh. See, because we get people from all over the world. And also you need to, and it's different languages.
What countries are you possibly trying to reference with that?
There's a little country that has one guy, and he, because he has no one else, can just say what any sound he wants, and it works because in his brain he knows what he's trying to say.
But why would he try to say anything? Why not just think whatever he wants?
Because he's talking to himself. We all talk to our... Don't tell me you don't talk to yourself.
If by that you mean talking to our evil clone that exists in this universe somewhere, then yeah, of course we all do that. Who doesn't do that?
I was hoping that you wouldn't bring that up. It makes you sound like a conspiracy theorist. It makes you sound like a QAnon.
Conspiracy theorist? Is that like the next evolution of a conspiracy theorist?
No, I'm using the language of the guy in the one guy land that he lives. That's
what land is that called, huh?
It's none of your bizwax.
None of your bizwax.
He doesn't want to get invaded, so I don't want to give away his coordinates. So that because he doesn't have much of a, trust me, his Navy's pretty weak. You literally can hitchhike to the invasion because it's not a lot of pushback. It's one guy. He might have a strong weapon, but he can't watch his six, right? He can't get his Air Force. He's got to choose, be an Air Force, but that leaves your ground troops under strain. If you get in your boat, or in this case, it's a dinghy, then he's left his plane and then his tank. One guy.
I mean, of course he can't watch his six. That's not even the word they use for six there. They use
yeah,
which it's really hard to pronounce, and it's kind of telling why his language hasn't picked up internationally.
You gotta understand something. Most people don't speak, and so I just was trying to make it in a language that most people understand, which is English. I think it's
okay. So I was gonna ask this bit, good bit or best bit?
As far as what bit?
The made-up language of
No.
But best bit. We have clearly never done anything quite as amazing and thought-provoking as this one.
Oh, you mean this? Just us screwing around with our talking about this thing?
Clearly, the best case of this example. Yes. Mm-hmm. Great job. Great job. And by the way, this is just to remind everyone, his idea. He, the professional comedian, decided that was comedy gold.
Well, I kind of stumbled into it because I found myself mispronouncing a word. Now, you do it regularly.
So like you stumbled over your words, and to save yourself, you just
created a new world.
On tuck and rolled down the hill.
Created a new world all by myself, like immediately. I mean, they call me go with the flow. Nothing can throw me. Nothing. Wyatt, I've been a professional comedian for over 30 years.
And it's clear from this bit. And you are definitely on your A game right now.
Well, but no, because not all your material is A material. There is some fluff, there's some filler every now and again.
But why would you intentionally choose filler or fluff when you're live on air to tens of people?
I panicked.
The professional, ladies and gentlemen. The professional.
Well, look, here's the deal. I tried, and I agree. We've kind of moved on. Matter of fact, the person that keeps belaboring the point is you. Had you just let it go, so we could sort of ease and sneak out.
I'm trying to
Trying to creep away.
You can't
from the failing bit, but you won't let it
creep away from this. Like incognito, while you in a clown makeup and clown shoes, honking around the place. You ain't that subtle, pal.
It's hard to tiptoe in clown shoes. You're right, son. I'm gonna.
I mean, where's the toe even defined in those things? They're like a giant sort of like red, just
floppy flaps.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why are clown shoes so floppy? Like,
I think
did they not have good clown cobblers back in clown world?
I would think that if clown is the preface to any labor system, it probably is not going to end well, but people will laugh.
Excuse me, clown college?
Yeah.
Which I guess in this case is most college.
Right. Yeah. Every college has become a clown college right now. Did you know, by the way, you know what today is, by the way? October.
Monday.
Yeah. As we film, it's October 28th. And it's October 28th, 2024. Now, I don't always reference the date, and the reason is I'd like to try to leave my podcast evergreen, which means that I try to leave the podcast, it's kind of like they don't really stay on a particular time frame, so that people can turn it on, and somebody might be watching this. Here's kind of a surreal, creepy thing. Somebody's going to be watching this right here 3 years from today. Now, I don't know if I'll be alive. I don't know if I'll be dead. I don't know if I will be in jail. I don't know if I will have fled the country. Who knows? We don't know what's going to happen in 3 years. But somebody's going to be watching this right now, and they will know things 3 years from now. I don't, because you are living in the future right now, looking back and go, ooh, this dude didn't know what was coming. Because as I tape this, we are, 7 days, 8 days from the presidential election of 2024 between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Now, I don't know who's going to win yet. You do, because you're in the future. I'm speaking to my future person. You already know. So you're 3 years in now. Maybe it's 2 years in, depends on when you're watching. So you know the ramifications of whoever won. I don't. But I'm letting you know that because it made me think of something, Wyatt. And it made me think of this. People, and especially kids your age, maybe not quite, because you are, did we ever figure out what you are? Your generation,
No, I don't.
Your generation P, right?
Q.
Your generation Q. But you're actually 96. So you're actually, what did we figure out? You're a millennial?
I think millennials.
Millennial, yeah. So they are kind of like one of the first of the groups. Well, no, I mean, they've given monikers to lots of generations, right? But like I'm a boomer, I'm a baby boomer. And that ends in, I think the last boomer is 63 is the end of like 47 to 63 or something crazy is boomer. We were the greatest generation. We were the smartest, the most savvy, the richest, the most intelligent, the most attractive. I'm not saying I am those things. I'm just saying I come from that generation of superiority. And I just don't make a deal about it because that's not my fault. I can't help it who and where I was born or what lineage I come from or what my genealogy pool is. How, we have no control over that. For example, you exuded from my loins. I created you. Now, you wouldn't literally exist to have this repartee with me if I didn't invent you. So that's a lot of pressure on me, but more importantly, I think
you invented me?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, I sometimes you mix the ingredients and you're going, oh, maybe I shouldn't have used
you were using a dry measure cup and you should have used a wet measure cup.
Well, I didn't know that this was brand new for me, son. I didn't know, maybe don't use the hemlock. Perhaps the Eye of Newt has been abandoned as a positive product.
Isn't Eye of Newt just like mustard seed or something?
I hope so.
I'm pretty sure all of those common Eye of Newt, bone of ham, or it's literally just like natural ingredients that they just didn't know the name of.
Wait a minute, you don't think that the concoctors, the witches, the necromant, whatever the heck they would call back in those days, you don't think they'd use like dried body parts? I mean, this is a time when they came up with rabbit's foot as a good luck charm or a talisman. So
where did that come from?
Wyatt, I started this questioning.
And I'm finishing it.
You don't get to ask me. The key to being a good host is you provoke intriguing information, you pass it on, and then if the other person is ignorant or stumbles, you look clean. It's like, look, I'm just asking who invented the rabbit's foot as a gift.
I'm asking who invented the rabbit's foot. What are you talking about?
Well, I'll bet you, and you wouldn't do this, but if you Googled it, I'm sure they will say, in the 14th century, they used to believe that the foot of a rabbit contained the soul of speed and able to traverse difficult ground, and so they thought that if they took the sole of the rabbit's foot and tied it around their neck, that they too could traverse difficult terrain at speeds not exceeding 10 miles an hour.
Okay, look.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what any of that was about, but you're right. It would be really, telling of me to just Google the answer to this question live on a recording.
What do you mean telling? Telling in what way?
Telling of my, lack of preparedness for this.
Yay!
So I would never do that. Oh, also, by the way, completely unrelated.
Yeah.
Europeans believed that witches could transform into animals, including rabbits. So a rabbit's foot could represent a dead witch, which apparently is lucky back then. I'm just assuming, of course. I would never
No, I'm just guessing. And you're in reading, your cursory reading over the years, you remembered some. Oh, I think I read that years ago about a witch turning into a rabbit, and that the foot of the rabbit somehow represented the witch. Now the witch is dead, the rabbit's dead. So what's the upside?
Also, something else that I just remembered conveniently.
Yeah.
The luckiest foot on a rabbit is the left hind foot.
Okay.
Because of, it's obvious, right? Why that is.
Yes.
I don't need to explain that, right?
I will say that is a little odd, because usually left is considered bad, wicked, dark. The left side, right? Jesus is on the right hand of God, right? The right-handed, left-handed. Matter of fact, in Middle Eastern countries, they eat with their hands and they only use their right hand. Do you know why?
Because I know what the left hand's used for.
And what's that? The other end of the meal?
Yeah, when it comes out the other end. Yeah.
No. So that's what. So if you're a lefty out there,
I only have to say I'm sorry.
I know. Well, and you know what? I said this at a podcast once, and I know I said it with one of my guests. I think it was the aerialist. I said this. I said there's two things that I kind of, if I could change about my physicality, that I would like. One, that I was Jewish. I just think there's something really...
Is that really a physicality thing, though?
Well, no, ethnicity, I guess. But I'm just saying, I don't know. I was trying to find a genre that I could describe this.
Out of every word you could have used, you picked genre?
Yeah.
Is this a podcast or a book?
Well,
what if we... An audio book, that's what it is, yeah.
What if we someday compile all of our podcasts into a stunning book, a coffee table
then we can
book.
give it to the one guy who'd watch it. I wonder how he's doing with that coup attempt on his land.
Well, we'll find out. Maybe he can let us know in his book. He can write us a preface.
You mean a blasphemy?
Yes, of course I meant that. But again, I'm not presuming my people know this, and I'm not going to wait for them to learn to continue the podcast. But here's the other thing. Left-handed. I wish I was left-handed. I think left-handed is cool.
I mean, nothing's stopping you. You can just, decide to write with your left hand, and eventually you get good at it.
Do you know I tried once? I tried to see if I could just switch over. And you can. Anybody can write with their left hand. But it's not as clean, right? Because you're not
because everything's made like paper and pen, and the way we write, left to right, is designed for right-handed people.
You end up having to push when you're used to pulling, and you're pushing across the page instead of pulling.
Well, so I wasn't even talking about that.
Yeah.
If you're writing in pen and you're left-handed, we write left to right. So you're just going to smudge the ink.
Yeah, that's part of the problem. Yeah. So,
surprised we haven't figured out a solution to that, actually.
well, the lefties probably just anchor their hand high.
Oh, that's got to look awkward, though. Like, especially if you're signing like an important document, like a mortgage paper or like a contract, to just be like, ugh, yep, it's official.
Smeared, smooshed. Well, anyways, I like left-handed, and I think it's an interesting thing, and I just thought that you should know that I am wondering to myself about the fear that people have about the future. I guess, do you remember why I brought up the rabbit's foot? Because I've completely
Absolutely not.
Yeah, me neither. Anyways, I brought it up, but the point I think I was trying to make was people fear the unknown. People fear the future, right? A lot of times. They don't know what's coming. It's like when I started saying to somebody who might be watching this 3 years from now, and one of the things I was trying to get to was, and somehow we ended up with a dead witch hind quarter left foot rabbit.
You know, as what happens on this podcast.
Indeed. And you probably saw it coming a mile away. That's what makes it so unique. But what I was getting at was in a week, they will have voted, and this guy watching here in the future will know who won and how that panned out. I don't know yet. But it makes you anxious because you see two candidates with two completely diametrically opposed points of view about how America should be, what it means to be an American, what it means for our history, what it means to stand for who we are. And boy, we don't know if it will last. And all great civilizations eventually failed. Nobody rules forever. Nobody's the top dog forever. Nobody's in first place forever. And that would include the United States of America. Now, we know that there must be, if there is going to be a help, a repentance. God always demands repentance of his people. It's always the church responsible to be the ones that repent first, because we have the knowledge of truth, so we are most responsible for it and to disseminate it. But more importantly, that we are the ones that think to ourselves, we have the information that needs to be seen in the way we live, right? Instead of talking about, because nobody cares what you talk about or what you say if you don't live by it. It's kind of like people would say, okay, if you were said, I'm like the World Series is happening right now, just again to date the moment. If you said, I'm a Dodger fan, all right, yep, I'm a Dodger fan. And everywhere you go, you're wearing a Yankee cap. And when you go to Vegas and you want to bet on the game, you bet on the Yankees. And when you go into the stadium, you're wearing a Yankee jersey and a Yankee hat. And when it's seventh inning stretch, you stand up for the Yankees. And when they hit a home run, you cheer. And when the Dodgers do well, you are sanguine and sad. And if the Yankees win, you're excited and you wave their pennant. But if the Dodgers win, you're sad. And at the end, you go, who are you a fan of? Oh, I'm a Dodger fan. And people go, no, there's nothing about you that indicates you're a Dodger fan, because everything you wear and do and say and behave like is the opposite. So that's kind of the key about saying, oh, I'm a Christian, and people say, oh, you're all hypocrites, you're all like bad and worse, and you're the worst people I've ever met, and everything is like, no. If they live that way and say they're Christians and live like idiots and jackasses and cruel and mean and judgmental in a self-righteous, arrogant way, and they don't care, then you're right. They're wearing the other uniform but pretending to be a fan of the home team. But if they will say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, I failed, please forgive me, I'm a sinner, I'm corrupt, I can't do this right, that's why God died, because he knew he was going to have to do all the work for me. That would be consistent with Christianity, because one thing that's interesting about our faith is we admit we suck at this. We admit it. Matter of fact, the suck at it is why God died. The suck at it is why we don't do it well. The suck at it is why it forces us to try to work it out with fear and trembling. And the suck at it is why we are never a good representation of our team. But we can still wear their hat, we can still wear their jersey, we can still root for them. But guess who's doing all the work? The team. They're the professionals, the major leaguers. We're just fans. That's kind of how I am at Jesus. Rooting for him. He did the work. He's the major leagues. I'm a fan. I'm trying to catch up, but I never get there. But in doing so, I'm obligated to do what I'm called to do as a human on this earth. And I don't know that I have a lot of time left. And one day, 3 years from now, or 10, or 2, or 6 minutes from now, somebody will be watching this moment, this tape right now, because it lives on the internet forever, and I'm dead. And that dude said it, and he's gone, and I wonder what it's like, because I'm in heaven. I do believe that there is a supernatural transcendent world, and that's where I'm going. Not because I deserve it, because God made a way for me through Christ. So here's what's interesting. I'm going to be filming, again, dating the time, and I don't normally do this, next Sunday, my brand new special, Wyatt, my brand new 7th album. And 7th is a day of rest. 7th is a perfect number. It's God's perfect number. It's my 7th album. So it's either going to be the greatest album I've ever made or the last album I'll ever get a chance to do. You know what it's called, son?
Laugh while it's legal.
I cannot believe you finally remembered something.
I mean, listen, my previous attempts weren't like that off.
They were. Remember how we did a whole thing last week, I think,
like,
on all of my album?
Like, chuckle illegally was, I got the concept right.
Yeah. I had to toy with it. I had to, tweak it a bit here and there and whatever. And yeah, chuckle,
snickle if you feel like it.
Right.
That was a good.
Right. That was guffaw while the getting's good. That was one of the options.
Yeah, but not many people knew what guffaw meant, so it kind of didn't pass the focus groups.
Yes. Snicker while you're still here. That was one I was playing with. I was toying with it.
Yeah, it was too similar to mine though, so we scrapped it.
That's it. Yuck it up while you're still not in jail. We just felt that was a little long.
I honestly thought, yuck it up would have been great, but apparently it didn't fit with like the theme.
Well, it did. You laugh, but they didn't get the idea of what about the legality of it. And
I mean, is yucking even like illegal? Because like, when's the last time you've ever heard of anyone yucking like in public? No one does. So like, is it just like an unspoken rule you're not supposed to, or is it like an actual crime to do so?
Well, I will say this: it's not a word that provokes
good feelings.
No, because like yuck means I don't like something.
But
yuck
if you're doing it in the
sounds like you're like puking.
No, yuck sounds gross. But the moment you're doing it in the upwards direction, it's hilarious.
Like a fountain?
Yeah, I suppose. Or like a waterfall going upstream.
Like a spout.
Ah, that's right. I was thinking spout or geyser.
Oh, my Lord. Wyatt, can you imagine if you were listening to this podcast as a general listener and you were eating?
Oh, goodness, I hope
perhaps
not.
you were eating while this was happening. I don't know that we've gone in a direction that is appealing to a lot of people, especially those who perhaps were just giving us a listen to see if this is a direction they want to go in.
Boy, they picked the wrong time to tune in.
Wrong time.
You should have come like 10 minutes early, or I hope 10 minutes in the future when we'll probably good again.
Well, here's the deal. We try to have fun. Remember, it's comedy, so we try to have some humor and try to keep it light because the guest is usually fairly serious. Wyatt, do you really notice a big difference between the way I interact with a guest in an interview and the way I act with you?
Oh, absolutely.
How so?
Well, when you're talking to the guest, you ask things that are insightful, clever, and thought-provoking. And then you talk to me.
And?
Did I say more?
Wait a minute. You're saying that I've never provoked your thought when I ask you something about why, for example, somebody would wear a dead leg around their neck from a rabbit and call that, a lucky charm. Think about what you told me about earlier when you recalled something you'd read years ago about why rabbit's foot were considered lucky. You said they thought that witches could turn into rabbits, and then the rabbit's dead. So the witch is dead, the rabbit's dead. They've cut its leg off, so it's clearly dead. It's rotted, it's dried up, like it's a carcass, right? It's a mummified. And they think that's lucky. Who in the creation of the rabbit, witch to rabbit, was lucky? No one. Who was lucky when it came to the rabbit dead? Not the rabbit. Removing its leg, even if it was just a flesh wound, and survived, woke back up and realized, I made it, I survived, let me get out of here. Oh, I can only go in circles. What happened? My leg was removed. So in no way is anybody from the witch to the rabbit involved in this lucky. But somehow the person that wears this rotting appendage is lucky. Can you think that perhaps what we're saying is people in earlier days perhaps weren't quite as what would be the
intelligent?
Word? Maybe, but I was going for something else.
It makes sense. I mean, hardware didn't exist back then, so how else were they going to learn?
Hardware?
Harvard, university, college, important thing, very well known. How did you not get that? Even if you didn't understand what I was saying, how could you not at least suss out that I was probably talking about education?
No, I get it. Harvard is a overhyped, overexpensive clown college.
Yeah.
Okay.
But even a clown college would have been better than, I guess, whatever they had back there, which was cut off a rabbit's foot for luck.
Yeah, that's what I'm just saying. It just doesn't make any sense for me at all. But it's, again, these are people that were more in touch with the spiritual realm. Have you ever thought about that? As much as we see them as, certainly not as scientifically acute, but they wouldn't have been, because the scientific method, as we know it, the method of science, the inductive method, the repeat and observe approach that we call modern science, or in other words, the scientific method, was created in the Middle Ages because of Christianity. They were the ones that thought there was a natural law, a natural order. If things worked in a progression that could be counted on, thus you could draw conclusions and make predictions. And so, they weren't completely ignorant. Around the same time these people thought that the witch was stuck in this rabbit's foot, they were also creating calculus. Newton created calculus, and they knew how the earth spun, and so these people weren't as stupid as sometimes we think they were. Now, they certainly were limited in some of the things they knew, but they were not idiots. I mean, thousands of years before that, they created the pyramids. Explain that. How in the world did they do that? That's rough. And some people say it's simply they just kissed the rabbit's foot and got to work in the morning. But here's what I have noticed, Wyatt. Part of what people can leverage the future towards is to control you. Now, you were born in 1996, June 10th, 1996.
Why not just dox my whole address while you're at it?
Well, like they can't figure this out? What?
Well, just because they can figure it out doesn't mean you got to hold their hand through the process.
Well, anyways, I just was trying to give you some props. I was hoping maybe somebody'd send you some gifts next June, maybe a rabbit's foot, maybe a to English dictionary translator. I don't know. But anyways, I do think that you've missed a lot of what I've gone through, because I started in the 60s. But you can understand something. In the 60s, just to show you how science can be manipulated and politicized and be way wrong, but be stuck in its agenda. In the 60s, we were told that oil was going to dry up within 10 years. There will be no oil left, and that's going to cause, the end of civilization as we know. This was the 60s. Oil, it's going to vanish away. We now have discovered we have tons more oil we know what to do with. And then with fracking now, we can even get tons and tons more. We got hundreds and hundreds of years worth of fuel from oil that we have. Well, in the 70s, you know what they used to say? I remember this. It was on Time magazine. In 10 years, there's going to be a nice age, right? An ice age. It's going to come back, and the entire world will be destroyed by an ice age. And 10 years came and gone, and it kind of didn't happen. Nobody apologized. Nobody came back and said, remember that ice age thing we were saying? All right, we're reconfiguring. In the 80s, they told us acid rain was going to destroy the crops, destroy the people. And, you know, if you think about it, talk about kind of a sci-fi horror movie concept that you were outside and it starts raining hydrochloric acid on you. So you literally are burning and melting away. Sounds rough, but in 10 years, acid rain is going to be the go-to for our rain. It's going to kill everything. Didn't happen, Wyatt. I don't know if you're aware of this, but nobody started melting through the rain. And then in the 90s, when you showed up, why, the ozone layer will be gone. 10 years. Ozone layer will be stripped away. We will just get the full brunt of the sun, and we will cook away. And that's if we have lived through the acid rain. You had about 10 years before this was all going to take place, and the ozone was completely depleted, and sure enough, somehow, we survived. Then the zeros came. What do they call them? The aughts?
I think the aughts or the naughties.
Okay, so the naughties showed up, and global warming took the stage. Remember that ice age we talked about a couple years ago? It didn't hit. The reason that it didn't hit was we got it a little bit tweaked. Instead of having the entire Earth frozen, it's going to catch fire. So now the whole place is going to be warm, hot. People are going to be thirsty. Everything's going to melt away, evaporate. Death is coming. Didn't happen. 10 years didn't happen. Why? Because we made it to the tens. Is that what they call it? The tens? The teens? What do they call it?
I think it's the teens.
Teens on. Climate change. We went from, the global warming, very specific, going this direction to heat, to climate change. Now we've decided, since the ice age didn't pan out and the superheated world didn't pan out, what we realized was what we really were discovering is the climate's going to change somehow and that it's going to fluctuate. And so fear that. Fear the fluctuation. In the winter, it's going to get really cold, but in the summer, it's going to get hot. Who would see that coming? Thank God we have scientists with very expensive equipment, probably from Harvard. Nevertheless, 10 years in climate change will be the end of humans as we know it. Well, we're in the 20s, and it didn't happen. We're still hanging on, and nothing really has gone sideways at all. Matter of fact, I think it's even a little cooler than it was many thousands of years ago. Before there was hairspray and whatever you call it, the sprays that cause the fluoride, whatever it is. I can't remember. Fluor something. The stuff. Wyatt, stuff. Anything?
The hairspray.
All right, never mind.
Freon.
Yeah, it's something. It's not Freon, but it's that. Yeah,
I know
chemical. Yeah, me too. Me too. My need for you, son, is to figure it out when I'm stumbling and bumbling. You have to be the one that comes in as the savior, the genius, to the rescue.
Okay, well, look, like I said, I can't just Google every single thing that we think we need just in time for
anything.
A podcast thing, okay?
Googled. I want you to have it at the tip of your tongue. I want you to have it off the cuff. I want you to have it extemporaneously. I want you to have it at a moment's notice. I want to have it as though you're stopping on a dime. I want you to have it as though there was nothing else.
I know. On an unrelated note, it's CFCs.
Yes, well, that's what I was getting
CFC.
at.
Yeah,
which stands for chlor.
It's like cool. It's like
cool.
Oh, jeez, I knew this in a past life.
Corruption, if I'm not mistaken. Cold.
No, it's
radium.
Chlorofluorocarbon.
Chlorofluorocarbon or chlor. I mean, I've got lots of. I got cinnamons. I have cinnamon. Is what
cinnamon?
I do.
I thought a lot of cinnamon.
No, I bought some at Costco. Hey, here's the thing, and it came in a pallet because I got it at Costco.
Did you buy this pallet $99 cinnamon at Costco again? We've been over this.
Wyatt,
we don't need that much cinnamon.
You know my motto. If you're going to have some kind of herb or spice, make sure it lasts
until the heat death of the universe.
That's where my boy is. You're there when I needed you, son.
I thought your motto is, I know it's called Cinnamon, but I want Cinemax.
Yeah, well, look, I do. And by the way, I just let you know, when I was growing up, we used to mix cinnamon with sugar, and then we make toast, put butter on it, and sprinkle that on it with cinnamon toast.
We still do that.
What?
Yeah, that hasn't gone away.
What?
In fact, I think I've done it. If not yesterday, I will do it today just to prove a point.
Even you?
I love cinnamon. Oh.
Do you like Cinnamon Life?
It is the best cereal.
I don't like cinnamon on my cereal.
You don't like cinnamon
I do.
on your cereal.
You know what I like? And I don't know if you ever had these or heard about them. This was a candy when I was growing up. Cinnamon-infused toothpicks.
Scented toothpicks?
Cinnamon-infused toothpicks. They came in a pack. You took out a toothpick, put it in your mouth. It was sweet with cinnamon. It was like soaked in the wood of this thing. And you would just put it in there and soak it and chew it up, and you'd get the sweet cinnamon flavor. I used to like that, and that was a toothpick. I would gnaw on a piece of wood with cinnamon on it. That's how much I like that. But don't put it on my dang cereal. Life cereal should remain neutral.
You know, I actually have a similar story. I used to like licking a mint-flavored dental floss.
It's not bad.
I know, but...
They have a cinnamon version.
They do? Where do you find it?
Probably in the floss aisle.
Yes, of course, the floss aisle. That's, hey, what's this worth? I need to go to the store for something.
Well, we got only a little bit of time to go. So.
Okay, cool. I'll get the car started. I need some life cereal. Yep, that's what it is.
Okay, well, okay. Then you can go get some like your life depended on.
Extra cinnamon, like what you like, right?
Not me. No, you know I don't. Unless that cinnamon is infused in wood. Then you can bring it home.
Okay, cool. So let's just not gloss over the fact that you just basically ate toothpicks as a kid.
Didn't eat it, didn't swallow them. That'd be eating it. No, I chewed on them, gnawed on them.
Well, isn't it still eating to just chew on it? Like,
no, it's just that would be called masticating.
What?
Masticating when you're chewing.
Why not? Is that really a word? That's an actual word. Why is that a word? Why do you need a separate word for eating and chewing?
Did you hear me use the word?
You just did.
Did I tell you what the word meant?
You did.
So I'm thinking that's a word. Okay,
but that was more of a rhetorical question of why we need 17 different words for the same thing.
I think, Wyatt, if we didn't have lots of synonymous words, language would be boring. Part of the fun is having different new... Do you know that the Eskimos have, I think, like over 100 words for snow?
Well, yeah, but isn't that talking about the different types of snow, like powdery snow or hard snow?
Yes. You know why? Because they live in an environment where they need to know exactly what kind of snow we're dealing with, because they're about to take the dog sled out and they need to know, is this going to be soft and packed? Is it going to be hard and crusty? Am I going to get sloughed down and can't get through it and I'm going to need a shovel? Should I not go out? Is it really icy and hard? They need to know because their life depends on it. So it's snow, but it has a little taste, a little nuance. So I can say chew, or I can say masticate, or I can say gnaw on, or I can say crunch, or I can say chomp, or I could say crush. And they all mean the same thing, but they have just a little beautiful angle that gives it just something flavorful and makes me want to explore this moment in a much richer way than using the same dang word every time.
Yeah.
Wyatt, celebrate the numerous words that humans have come up with to say the same thing.
I mean, I'm going to use that word from now on, and you can't stop me.
Which one?
Masticate.
It's not even a real word.
I looked it up. It is.
I told you.
I intuitively deduced that it was probably real.
You think your dad's an idiot? God's sake, White. Let me be an idiot in real time, but don't start calling me that when I'm actually pulling something off. Wait till I actually stumble and fall like I did earlier when I had to create a whole civilization.
You created an entire civilization instead of just stopping your sentence and starting over again.
Wyatt, that's what it takes, baby, when you are a entrepreneur, capitalist, living on your own, no agent, no manager, hanging on by a thread. All I got is me and God doing our best to keep you in life cereal with cinnamon, I might add. So be grateful that God invented me so that you could exist. Anything else you want to say, son?
The best way to eat life cereal is dry from the bag.
Interesting.
No, I will not elaborate.
I like it. Okay, here's another thing that I guarantee everybody's going to disagree with that are watching. You know who's watching, right?
Nick, Chris,
Saint Nick.
Everyone.
Hey, did I tell you this? Do you
No.
know when I film this next week? You're going to be there, right, son?
I would
You're
hope
coming up?
so.
Yeah. Here's the deal. Guess who's coming to the taping?
You.
Yeah, and I guess who else?
That's the only given I have.
You ready?
Tell me.
Saint Nick.
Saint Nicholas
Saint Nick's is flying in, and he's coming to see the show. It's on Sunday. I think he's coming to the 5. He has to be because he bought it before the second went on show. So he's coming to the 5 p.m. show. He's going to be in the audience for Laugh While It's Legal. That'll be shot on November 3rd, 2024. So if you're watching this 3 years from now and I'm already dead, at least you got some laughs at my expense, even though I'm no longer here. But it's okay if you cut off my left foot and hang it around your neck. It'll bring you luck. Wyatt, I think we might have to do something special with St. Nick since he's going to be in town. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to leave it right there. I think you can draw your own conclusions, can't you, Wyatt? No, you can't.
No, I'm a terrible artist.
You're a terrible drawer. I forgot about that. Well, maybe AI can draw it for you. Okay? But I do want my people to understand something. For those of you who are watching or passing on, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to like this stinking thing so it gets more traction. I need you to subscribe to Brad Stine Has Issues on YouTube and share it with your friends. Folks, if you believe what I'm doing has some value, if you believe that humor matters, if you believe that our faith matters, if you believe that conservatism matters, if you believe that those of us who are still using the First Amendment while it's getting good matters, and you want free speech, go out there and people fighting for you like I do as a comic, I need your help. Subscribe. Go to bradstein.com. Join the militia of the mind. That gives me your email so I can send you my newsletters. Join the mighty 10,000. Say, I want to be a disciple for Jesus, not just a Christian. That's easy. A disciple, that's hard. That's what you're called to be, the hard part. And it's $3 a month, but you get all my comedy on the computer for free and a special guest interview question that only you get. So it's a way for you to participate in helping me try to defend our faith, our freedoms, our religious liberties in America while we can. And you'll know when you watch this episode in the next few weeks and months how that's going to pan out, because you'll know who the president is. And either way, folks, either way, no matter who wins, neither one of them are the end of America or the savior of America. Jesus is. I know there's Jews out there, and there's Muslims out there, and there's atheists out there, and there's Hindus out there, and there's Buddhists out there, and you're like, what do you think? Well, we're the West. The West was created on Christianity. It was. That was our morals. That was our foundation. That was our standard. And from that, we got human rights, women's rights, children's rights. We got universities, we've gotten scientific method, all the things that you can read about in Dominion, Tom Holland's book, Dominion, that talks about how the West wouldn't exist without Christianity. It doesn't mean that Jesus is God or anything. I get that. But that idea changed the West and created the greatest, most egalitarian human civilization in human history. I think part of what you should observe when you're looking at a philosophy is not just whether it's something you like and resonate with and agree with, and you should, but does it also work? When it's put into place, how does it affect culture? How does it affect people? And if it's done in a positive way, unlike anything else, perhaps it means it's true. And that's what I believe about my faith. Somebody else that believes that is the guest that's about to come on, because they fight for our First Amendment religious liberties rights in America. I need you guys to share the snot out of this episode, because I need people to go donate to these people. Here's what you're going to do, by the way. When you go to them, it's called. I want you to go on the internet, and I want you to share with us all your friends. supremecoup.com/Brad. Supreme Coup, like a COUP, a coup, like a military coup. supremecoup.com/Brad, and donate whatever you can, or get on a monthly donation. These people are some of our last vestige of trying to keep the Supreme Court the way it is and not be circumvented by people that want to pack it and destroy our ability to have that balance. They're fighting and trying to use the Constitution. That's all we have to defend this nation when it comes to our laws. Of course, God is all we have when it comes to defend our nation's existence, because he's in charge of everything. He's the sovereign one. He's in control. And so, again, if you're a Christ follower, always get on your knees, ask God for wisdom, intelligence, and insight, and how you can repent and become the God that God becomes the appreciative of what you're trying to do and serve him, and so that he can bless us. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're shooting for. And so this is a really very, very perfectly, a week before the election for the most part, conversation with somebody with First Liberty Institute. And you need to support that and share that with every Christ follower you know that cares about freedom in this America. So you're going to hear where we're at, what's coming, and where we're going, and you can participate and fight in the good fight, just like you do when you show up every Monday. And I'm grateful you did. So take a deep breath, get yourself some popcorn, put some cinnamon on it, and enjoy and learn and be inspired, and then take action. After listening to this interview with God's comic, Brad Stine, and the president and CEO of First Liberty Institute, Kelly Shackelford. How do you do, my brother?
Awesome. Good to be with you.
I was thinking about the First Amendment, because everybody talks about the First Amendment whenever they reference free speech. I've got the First Amendment. But I noticed that the founders didn't just say you got free speech. They kind of parsed them into some categories, elements of what free speech would entail. And I also noticed specifically that the first speech they felt was most to be protected, I have to guess, because they could have put it in any order they wanted, was religious liberties. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or forbidding the free exercise thereof. So let's start right there. Your specialty is religious liberties. Do you believe that religious liberties are in fact the most important of all free speech liberties? And if so, why?
Yeah, the founders called it our first freedom for a reason, not just because it's the first two clauses of the First Amendment, but because they understood that if you lose that freedom, you will lose all your freedoms. And the reason is, the one thing that a totalitarian regime can never allow are citizens who hold an allegiance to one higher than the government. And so whenever you see that sort of convalescing of power or an attempt at some sort of totalitarianism, the first flashpoint will always be religious liberty. And if you lose there, you'll lose everything else. You'll lose your free speech, you'll lose your economic freedom. And some people are like, well, I don't know, I kind of understand that theoretically, but we just lived through that in the United States during COVID, right? I mean, what happened when all these governors, mayors, county officials got power that they had never had? What was the flashpoint in court? It wasn't, businesses are being closed. But the legal flashpoint was the churches and the synagogues being closed down. And we, at First Liberty, we had a lot of cases. We won every single COVID case we had. But what was fascinating, Brad, was never in any community did I see a lawsuit to open the businesses and that opened the churches and synagogues. Everywhere we went, we won the lawsuit on behalf of churches and synagogues within 1, 2, maybe at the most 3 weeks, the businesses were open. So it was exactly what the founders were saying. And you would think with all the businesses shut down all over the country, that would be the big legal issue. It was not. The thing that freed the businesses was religious freedom. And it makes sense in a lot of ways, right? If if you don't have another way the religious freedom is referred to as freedom of conscience, the government will not allow you the freedom to choose, your beliefs about your relationship with God, what's going to happen after you die. I mean, the ultimate issues of life. It's certainly not going to allow you to criticize the government officials. So it's the starting point really for, and it'll tell you sort of the barometer of whether you're in danger of losing all your other freedoms.
Yeah, I think that that's really kind of what I try to understand. I think that so many Americans are so ignorant of their rights. They just were not educated. And, we don't have civics really anymore in academia. And why would you? If you are a Marxist organization that is trying to create activists instead of educating, which is what's happening with the Paulo Freire style of education that basically teaches to create activists, not educate, which is what's going on. I got that from James Lindsay. This is what's happening. And so when you have lost your conscience clause, basically, what else is there? Because that's what gives you your agency. That is your autonomy. That is your freedom, is how to think, how to reason, what to believe, what is your passions, what is your subjective desires, but also you have to be able to understand that even though we might have differences of opinions and different things, each one of those ideas have to be equally dignified, as long as one of them isn't breaching the Constitution or is immoral or whatever is harming people. But there we sit. So, I mean, man, there's so much to navigate here, and I want to take advantage of this because rarely do you get to speak to a lawyer and not have to pay a consulting fee. So I'm going to get as much out of this as I can. So one of the things that is also a little tricky is not all religions are the same. So there are countries where a religious perspective is inculcated into law. It's called Sharia. Well, the problem is that doesn't allow other religions equal access. They don't. That's part of their way. Well, Christianity has always said part of what makes Christianity unique is those who despise my belief system are welcome here too. Now, that's absurd unless you realize that God said, love your enemy and pray for those that despitefully use you, and that God Almighty lets people walk into hell. That's how much he cherishes freedom. You can disagree with me if you want. But so let's start with this idea of people who might look at you, and I'm sure you've heard all the insults, obviously, but let's sort of view those and see if we can sort of deconstruct the falsehoods of them. Okay, so now we're looking at you and they're saying, you want a theocracy. That's what you want. You want to impose your Christianity on the rest of us. How do you prove that is not, in fact, have anywhere on your radar?
Well, it'd be hard to make that accusation since we represent all faiths. We've got Jewish synagogue cases all over the country. We've got, of course, churches and Christian cases. We've represented the Falun Gong, Native American Indians, you name it, because we really believe in religious freedom. Yes. That's the best system. And a person's relationship with God is between them and God, not the government, them and God. And so yeah, I mean, proof's in the pudding on our clients and who we actually represent. And we believe in religious freedom for everybody, even people who don't agree with us, because we don't even agree with each other about everything.
No, but I mean, that is my point, is that, part of a philosophy and an ideology isn't even to try to debate its merits, but you also can look at history and go, well, which one worked? Which one actually gave people freedom? Which one actually cared about the downtrodden and tried to bring some kind of egalitarian opportunities to people, not expectation that you will all land the same. That's Marxism, but the idea that you all will have the same opportunities, and that's really what makes Christianity so important. Is it what created the West? Well, the Judeo-Christian ethic that also inculcated, Greek philosophy and so forth, so that we could understand democracy, freedom, and so forth and so on. So let's start looking at that. What would be the easiest, I would guess, swipe that a progressive leftist might take at you is The First Amendment is very clear that we have a separation of church and state. That's very clear in the Constitution, other than the fact that it's not stated there anywhere or in the Declaration. But nevertheless, that seems to be the go-to based on that one letter that Jefferson wrote to the Anabaptists. But nevertheless,
pretty big trick for years. Throw a phrase into a Supreme Court case, have it be nowhere in the Constitution, and then even extract the phrase out of history in which it was really used. Because I think all of us would agree that the separation of the institution of church and state is good. We don't want the church to be the state or the state to be the church. As the founders would say, they didn't want the Church of England to be their church. And of course, that's why the founders didn't say church and state in the Constitution. What they said is they didn't want a, quote, establishment of religion. They were talking about the federal government picking one religion, establishing that as the official religion and forcing everybody to support it or be punished. That's what they were talking about. And again, I think on that, we could all agree. But what they do instead is they try to take a term that's not in the Constitution and then pervert it away from its meaning and say that, well, it really is not separation of church and state, it's separation of religion and state. So wherever government is, religion can't be. Well, government's everywhere. It's just a tool for them to push religious freedom and expression to the corners of society. And it worked for, at least the last 50 years. There's a case called Lemon that is aptly named, Lemon of a case. And it was based upon this idea of a wall of separation, and it created a government hostility to religion. And the good news, though, is just 2 years ago, in the Coach Kennedy case, we represented Coach Kennedy, who was told he couldn't pray after the game. We went after Lemon and said, it's wrong. It's been wrong for 50 years. You've been citing it for 50 years, over 7,000 times to attack religion. It's nothing about what the Constitution says. Supreme Court agreed with us 6-3 and said Lemon is over. So that was a dramatic shift away from a lie towards what the Constitution actually says. So it's a really good step. One of, I think, many that will be coming in the future as we keep litigating in this area.
But it also brings up the fragility of the interpretation of the Constitution, because we continue to, hold our breath every time a major hot button case ends up at the Supreme Court's desk, like, are they going to let me, be free? Are they going to allow us, this? And it's like, they were never supposed to have that kind of power. As a matter of fact, I believe the founders considered them the weakest of the three branches.
Right.
And and I think it was Madison or Adams, one of the two, also, though, did say that if any of them go rogue and could be of the most detriment to this nation, it will be the Supreme Court, because they're the ones that can just sort of out of whole cloth make up new rules. And so let me ask you this. This is a tricky one, because you just talked about this Lemon case that was cited, and that is, I guess, and I'm a comic, so I'm an idiot. So trust me when I say I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm trying as a layman to walk through this with your expertise. But there is this idea in law as that they call case law. In other words, once something kind of has been established and it seemed to be the premise by which they base this verdict, then people kind of have to look at that and go, well, we've already kind of locked this one down, so we don't have to revisit this every time we decide to talk about this again. Well, this has kind of been established, so to speak. This is the precedent by which from now on, this will always be the anchor for where we're moving forward. Well, so someone could easily have said, well, this Lemon case has been the case law for 50 years. So who the heck are you to suddenly come in and decide, why don't I get to do that when I say case law says that, you can't do A, B, and C? I've decided to sub it, which they've done with the Roe case in 72, where there was never any protection for you to kill your baby. They made it up.
Yeah.
So that's dangerous. How do we try to disarm a case law that we consider to be unconstitutional? It was simply a bad decision. And how do we not be accused of, or use that as our cudgel to try to basically force our perspective into a new case? How do you make that distinction?
Yeah, well, it's there's some difficulty because there is an importance in the law of having consistency, stability, that people can know what their rights are, can know what the law is. We've just gone through a pretty dramatic, and most people don't understand it. They certainly don't talk about it intelligently, publicly, but we've been through a pretty dramatic change on the court, not from a political standpoint. This is what the media, in their really lack of thinking and understanding, try to, it's like judges want to get to certain results. They don't. Most good judges don't. They want to follow the right process. And for about 80 years in this country, we had a Supreme Court which didn't think its job was to find the original meaning of the text. They thought the Constitution was a living, evolving document. They could read into it what they wanted based upon what the needs of the day were. And they thought that's what being a good judge was. Really, through a number of years of scholarship, arguments, back and forth, it became clear. Even the more on the left tried to say they were originalists. Originalism won out, which is the idea that no, the job of a judge is to find the original meaning, whether it's in the text of the Constitution or statute. So for the first time, while Trump was president, we got a majority of justices who, and it's the same today, who think their job is to find the original meaning of the text. And that's what they've been doing. And man, that really has made some people angry. Yeah. Because they've removed these political decisions, and just in the irony of all ironies, the attack on the judge on the new court is that they're political. They're not political at all. They're actually just restraining themselves and saying, whether I like it or not, here's what it says. That's the way it always should have been. But there are some people complaining you're destabilizing the law because you're overturning these made up decisions that were fabricated, decades ago. No, they're what they're doing is they're looking at the Constitution, they're looking at the federal statute, and they're saying, what does it say? And they're going to be faithful to that and say, if somebody wants to change what it says, that's up to the legislature, that's up to the people. But we're not going to take the law in our hands and decide what we think the living, evolving Constitution should say. That is an abuse of power. And that's a huge change. And that's why you're seeing not only things like Roe v. Wade, like our religious liberty cases I'm talking about, Second Amendment cases, Chevron deference just got dumped, which is a huge power decision that earlier had given all this power to unelected bureaucrats to rule your lives, although none of that was in the Constitution. That's now gone. So you're seeing these big things happen, not because the court has an agenda, but because the court is just saying, what does the Constitution say? And we're not going to go with stuff that's just made up.
Well, and nothing will seem more radical to a leftist or progressive than returning to the original intent, because their intent was to create a living, breathing document, which means it's not immutable, which means it can be manipulated to fit your agenda. And the truth is, me too. I'm a right-leaning conservative Christian, so I have an agenda. Yeah, I want the original intent of the Constitution to be the foundation, because these guys invented America. They made the rules, and they even gave you an option. If you don't like it, you can make an amendment. And if that gets passed, then okay, that's up to you. But here's the rules to the game. Here's how it works. Yep. And so once that started going sideways, those were the ones that began to make it very unstable to understand what our rights were, because we no longer had the ultimate beginning place by which we could, draw our conclusion. I'm confused. I'm confused. Let's see what the rules were. Oh, this is what he meant. And we got plenty of original documents
Yes.
of the founders and people of that era writing to each other, explaining their point of view. Here's what we think this meant. Here's what we were trying to do. Here's what it is that this is all about. I can understand them calling it political because it's political until it agrees with your point of view. Then suddenly it's just rational and it makes sense. So, we all know that everybody's in it for power. Everybody's in it to control everybody else. And so here we sit. Well, how about the accusation perhaps that you are trying to impute Christian nationalism? That's become a very disparaging frame now. I don't know if that's been thrown your guys' way. I can't imagine it hasn't. But what's your thoughts on that idea?
It hasn't on us because we represent so many faiths. It's hard to be a Christian nationalist when I'm standing next to the rabbi in court. So it's a little problem with that. But I've always felt that term is just a term that a bigot uses who wants to discriminate against people based upon their religion. That's what I've found. It really doesn't have any meaning, or it has whatever meaning somebody wants to shift to at the moment. Is it wrong to be a Christian or a Jew and also be for those principles of those faiths helping the country? Is that a bad thing? But they're wanting it to be sort of like a white supremacist or something like that. So there's all these different connotations and denotations, and I just find it's a pejorative that's used usually by people who want to discriminate against others because of their religion. So I don't think it's that useful. I think it'll fade away because it really doesn't have my substance to it at all.
Thing is, the left, if you haven't noticed, their only strength is pejoratives. That's all they have is attacks on your character because they have none. Attacks on your virtue because they have none. Attacks on your points of view because they don't have anything that makes sense. Marxism is anarchy. It's absurd. It is absurdity. And I find it fascinating. This is the thing that, and as a lawyer, it's important that you guys make sure things are defined properly and that we are very articulate about what we're trying to discover here and that we're not trying to obfuscate some of these ideas. We want to be very transparent and very above board. But as a comic who's in a whole different world than you, but words are crucial to me because they disseminate information. They try to make a point. They're trying to establish a point of view, a worldview. And you're using satire and sarcasm and things along that line to bring laughter and put some spoonful of sugar in this medicine. But hopefully you're making a social commentary that causes people to kind of revisit the laziness of so many Americans of not really digging in and saying, you better figure out what your rights are because they're going away. If you don't know what they are, you wouldn't know how to protect them. And what we also saw, and you brought up COVID, and I've said this to other people, that what really broke my heart, they didn't come in and steal our First Amendment rights. People gave them away. Now, that's a whole different flavor if you don't treasure liberty. Because how can I defend it if the majority of my fellow Americans aren't going to fight with me? What are we going to do? Because I can't do this by myself. I'm just one guy. But here we sit with words being used to disparage. We have social media now, so everybody doesn't want to be shamed or ridiculed. And so they just back off and saying, I'm not that guy. Let me give you an example. I don't know if this was your case, but I'm thinking of Jack Phillips, poor guy. I don't know how many times they've sued this guy.
Yeah, I know.
First off, thank God the man has stood strong and said, I'm going to fight. And I think his wins have been set some precedents. I hope maybe even helped some of your cases. I don't know. But I do know this. Whenever you hear it referenced, they always say, bake a cake, man, just bake the cake. And that simple bumper sticker version of this thing was never what this was about.
No.
He said, I'll bake your cake anytime you want. I'm not going to decorate it.
Yeah.
Now, that's a huge difference. One is simply providing you a a neutral product that you can do with as you please. Decorating says, I have to put my artistic acumen upon this. I have to take my point of view and perhaps discard it because maybe I disagree with this particular point. No different than if a guy went into a Jewish bakery and says, I want something celebrating Hitler's birthday. He's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not interested in that. Let's kind of observe, because I'm sure there's Christians watching this. Some maybe, unfortunately, are struggling with a scenario right now that they might even have to give you a call. But let's talk about this idea of your rights from your point of view. That's what I think makes religious liberty so crucial, because it's your conscience, like you said. So how does that really, what kind of protections are there on your viewpoint? Because viewpoint discrimination, I know, is illegal. But how do you dissect those ideas? How do we decide that it's just a viewpoint and it's not you trying to harm somebody else?
It's highly protected in the law. Free exercise of religion protects you if it's the government. But even in employment, we just won a major case at the Supreme Court a year and a half ago that really restores religious freedom protection to everybody who works, because we have statutes that have been in place for 50 years because our country has always valued religious freedom. And so there are a lot of statutes that go back to the very founding that try to accommodate people. So let's say you're an Orthodox Jew and you can't work on Saturday. Should the employer try to force the person to work on Saturday when they can make a shift change without any problem? We say that shouldn't be allowed, that we value religious freedom and we want to encourage accommodation. That's how we should be with each other as Americans. And so there's lots of outright protections against religious discrimination, but there's also protections even and requirements to accommodate people's religion if you can do so. And those are the best American traditions. I mean, when we founded this country, we weren't of one religion. I mean, we had Quakers and Baptists and Congregationalists and all kinds of people. And one thing they learned from England is, I want to have religious freedom. I want to live in a place where the government cannot attack me because they don't like my religion. And this is what helped form the greatest country in the history of the world. And we could lose that very easily if we're not diligent in fighting for it. And I mean, as a group who does this every year, I mean, gosh, I don't know how many years ago. I think maybe if I'd have gone back 15 years ago and you just said, how many cases do you have right now? And I said maybe 40 or 50. And right now it's 365. So, and we're having to turn things down because we just can't represent everybody. So the attacks are greater than we've ever seen because there's a lack of respect or understanding for the value of religious freedom, even if you're an atheist, even if you're not a person of faith at all. And that's one of the cool things, Brad, is I'll speak a lot around the country and I'll have people all the time come up to me afterwards. I'm just thinking of a particular guy as an example right now. Peter came up to me and he said, I grew up in Czechoslovakia. He said, and I saw them take down the religious symbols, and within 2 months, we all lost our political freedoms. And he hands me a check for $5,000 and says, I'll be supporting your nonprofit from now on because I think that what you're doing is the most important thing anybody's doing. And he said, and I'm not a person of faith at all. And it's just so powerful. I hear so many of these people from like Eastern European countries and other places that have lived through this. And, when you have a totalitarian state, there isn't room for them and God. So they understand, and this Peter understood that he wanted his freedoms. And if he was going to have his freedoms, he knew that religious freedom had to be protected. And so here's a guy that every few months sends us a check so that we can help people. And he's not even a person of faith.
Right.
He just understands his rights and how important it is.
And let's just say there are, and this has happened many times, is that atheists will watch my show because, they just find the guests interesting, whatever, who knows. But nevertheless, can you explain it. Let's say he's watching going, well, yeah, I mean, I don't care. You be whatever you want, but I don't want religion to be given any kind of status or any kind of specific. Can you explain to an atheist or a non-religious sort of apathetic person why? We've kind of talked about it, but can you specifically kind of break down why religious liberty loss would be the loss of freedom for everybody? Just so that if they're not quite putting the puzzle pieces together, why is that the fulcrum, the foundation for where every other freedom of speech lies?
Number one, because it goes so far as to even really decide whether you have a right to your own conscience, to your own thinking and expression as to what is right and wrong for yourself. If you can't make those determinations, you really lost everything. And that's why it's the very first freedom. But just as a matter of pragmatics and how it works out, when you have a totalitarian regime, and you think of any of them that exist, I mean, let me put it this way: find me an oppressive regime anywhere in the world that has religious freedom.
Right.
They
Or guns.
Yeah.
Or citizens have guns.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. And so the one thing, there's just not room for the government to be God and for God to be God. So if you want freedom for everybody, you've got to have religious freedom, or the government will be God and they will control every part of your life. Another way it's been referred to at times is in order to have a free society, you have to have what's called intermediary institutions that separate the government from the citizen. So for instance, our children are not children of the state. In the United States, they are children of their parents, and the parents have authority versus the state, absent some proof of some dramatic harm that they're causing their child. But all the presumption is the authority over the parent. Parents have, quote, the fundamental right to direct the upbringing and education of their children. And that buffer of the parents between the state really separates us from these totalitarian societies. The churches, the synagogues, the houses of worship do the same thing. It's really hard for the government to claim to be God when everybody's going to church and going, I'm not bowing my knee to you. And so these are really important institutions for places that have freedom, and they have to be exterminated in order for the totalitarianism to happen, which is why you see in Marxism and all this, the first thing they go after is the family, the church. These are things that get in the way of them controlling every individual.
Yes. Well, let's also correct me if I'm wrong, but just since I'm sort of representing the layman out there, one thing I also think about the Constitution when I look at it is it's really not that complicated. I mean, if you read it, it's not like you're sitting there going, oh, this is all, legal gobbledygook. I can't fit. It's not, it's pretty straightforward. They tried to make anybody able to understand what this meant. Now, they wrote it in cursive, so that's a little struggle for some of the new people that can't speak right cursive. But this is something that I've always kind of tried to put together in my own mind, and tell me if I'm missing anything. So if we take that first line, the religious liberties, which is, again, what your guys' specialty is, First Liberty Institute, and I'm sure there'll be many people that want to start giving to you, or and also have access, so we'll need a link, because there might even be folks that need your help. But nevertheless, here's what I was curious about. So am I right to assess that when the first line says Congress, we stop? Okay, so whatever they're about to say, it predicates Congress. Something has to do with Congress right now. Shall make, no law. Oh, okay. So this is not about a point of view, or I'm not comfortable with your religious belief. It's a congressional law respecting the establishment. Okay, so Congress can't make a law that establishes religion or forbids. So I can't forbid by law your religious practices. the free exercise thereof. And then I would say to people, and this is just me, a comic, I don't know what I'm doing. I said, when did Congress make a law stating you have to have a nativity scene in a public park? Oh, they never did. Okay, well, when did they make a law, Congress, because that's what it says, they made a law saying you must have a Christmas party at school and you sing about Jesus. When did they make that law? Oh, they never did. When did they make a law that states that you must pray in school? Okay, they never made a law. So what you're saying is it was community standards. The original intent is saying you can have Jesus Town taxpayer funded if you choose, as long as it's not mandated by law. It's something people have said, we like this. This is how we're going to be. And you can have Atheist Town too if you want. You just can't breach the Constitution. So that's the way I saw it, was none of these First Amendment religious impositions or trying to shove religions into the public sphere cases were ever based on what the Constitution forbid, which was a congressional law. Now, am I just making this too simplistic?
No. You're actually kind of on to an argument that Justice Thomas has been making for a number of years. He's the only one willing to make it, but it's a truthful argument. It's just probably not going to be successful, which is when the founders created the Constitution and the First Amendment, most states had their own religions. So there wasn't religious freedom fully in the states, depending upon the states. This was regarding the federal government. That's what this was meant for. And the idea was to let, kind of like the states were experiments, to let the states even experiment with religious freedom and what they could do. Most states had a requirement of a belief in God or in Christ before you could hold office.
Right.
There are all kinds of things. What happened though is, and I don't want to get too complicated for the viewer, but there's a thing called incorporation, where at one point, the court started taking things that were in the Bill of Rights and saying that they were incorporated in the 14th Amendment being passed, and that basically they now apply to the states. So just like the federal government can't do these things, the state also can't do these things. And Thomas's point is really, when you look at the Establishment Clause and the religion clauses, that was really at the time never meant to be applied to the states. So it really shouldn't happen that way. But that's why you get to this situation where in the beginning you had all these states that were different, that had less or more religious freedom, that maybe you're supposed to be a Catholic if you're going to be in Maryland, or you're supposed to be, a Quaker if you're in Pennsylvania, and maybe you'd have less freedoms if you weren't. That's the way it was originally, and that provision was regarding the federal government not interfering because they didn't want the Church of England situation. So it's what's amazing, Brad, is, I guess it's not amazing. I guess it's what we should expect. We finally get a court who thinks their job is to find the original meaning of the text. And we have these major decisions that we've just won in the last 3 years. The Kennedy case, which overturned Lemon and gets us back to what the founders meant with regard to public expressions of faith. The Groff case involving religious freedom in the workplace, which was a great restoration of what the statute has said for 15 years, but has been ignored because of a really a made-up Supreme Court decision 46 years ago. Even in the school choice arena, the really good victory in the Carson versus Makin case we had, where Maine was trying to say, well, we let you parents choose a school for your kids, public or private, but not a religious school. So, we're like, no, you can't do that. That's religious discrimination. And we won that case. So these are great victories. So what's the response? Is the response, well, we don't think that's what the founders meant, or we've got history that shows that this is different. That's not the response. The response, and it's not just religious freedom, it's because of Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs decision, and all this. The left has just gone crazy. They don't like a few opinions. And so they literally want to destroy the Supreme Court. And there are numerous, attempts to do that, but there's a barrage. If you watch, I mean, we've had to create a whole program just in the last 6 months alone because our court is really in danger. And I mean that. I mean, 6 months from now, I would say there's a 25% chance that our country could be over because of what they're wanting to do to the court. They're talking about lots of stuff, term limits and and ethics control by the Senate over the court and all these things. And we can get into that if you want to, but really those are all facades because those take constitutional amendments. But there's one thing they can do, and they know they can do with just a majority vote. So if you had one party take the presidency, the House, and the Senate, which very easily could happen, all it takes is a majority vote, and they can add 5, 10 justices to the Supreme Court, 15, whatever they want to do. And people tend to think, okay, that's really bad. One party does that, then the next party will do the other. No, that's not what happens. If you look at history, look at Venezuela, look at Argentina, look at other countries, the moment you do that, you're done as a country.
Yeah, there's no going back.
No, the 3 branches of government has just collapsed one of the branches.
Yeah.
The judiciary is now underneath whatever political power, whatever rights you think you have, you don't, because they can just add 10 justices and take them away. So you are now in some sort of petty dictatorship, and we could be there as quickly as 6 months from now, and most Americans are totally unaware. And this is not a theory. I mean, you've got the president of the United States talking about this right now. You've got the majority leader in the Senate saying they're going to get rid of the filibuster so they can do this kind of thing. You've got one of the Kamala Harris's communications director, Brian Fallon, is the head of a group called Demand Justice. What is their number one issue? Number one issue is court packing. And they've spent tens of millions of dollars on it. So, I mean, you've got all the infusion of all these people who want this. They're just angry at the court, and they seem to have a very short-sighted, but they're just so angry they don't care, that they're willing to destroy the court because they don't like a few opinions. Instead of, let's find out what the founders really said, what they really meant, what the Constitution really says, and let's go to that. Let's argue on those things. That's not what they want to do. They are in a full assault on the court right now, and we watch these attacks and newspaper articles, and every day there's just a basket full of attacks, new bills being filed to take away the authority of the Supreme Court, which again is unconstitutional, but it's happening almost every day. And I hope Americans will wake up. I think that we did some polling on this. Americans are against this. This was tried in 1936 and 37 under FDR, and it was rejected just big time. But the problem is, if people don't know, if they wait until after the election, it could be too late. So we're doing everything we can between now and the election to just force the issue into the discussion that everybody running for Senate, President Trump and Vice President Harris should be forced to answer how they're gonna, if they have some idea that they're gonna reform or reshape the U.S. Supreme Court, because that's a dangerous, dangerous thing they're talking about, and we could all lose the rule of law overnight. And we've got to force this into the conversation and have a discussion, because, as you said, the judiciary is probably the weakest branch, but if you collapse that independent judiciary, you don't have the United States of America anymore. You've got some third world country.
Right. And it never feels real. Like, how is this going to happen in the freest nation on earth? How could they do that? Especially because there are some alleged checks and balances. I mean, there were supposed to be checks and balances from the get-go, and we've watched Republicans abandon their obligation to check and balance President Obama when he was in office. I mean, when IRS went after citizens,
Yes.
Lois Lerner, she should have gone to prison. I mean, I don't understand. You can't do that. You can't weaponize something that is. I don't know if treason might be a bit of of too much of a word, but it would be something like an insurrection or something like a. I'm not even sure what the proper term, because I know that treason is easy to say, but it's a very difficult thing to get convicted of, because it's very specific, and it should be, because it's about as big as it gets. That's basically you're taking you're taking up an enemy's position to help destroy your own country. So that's as bad as it's going to get, frankly. But what we've learned from the progressive point of view, and the Democrats, for some reason, have decided that's who we are now. They do not care about the original intent. They've made this very clear for quite some time, when they started calling the founding fathers dead white European males. This is racism. All of this Marxist Frankfurt School, Marcuse crazy crap that they've created to dismantle even our heritage and our history as something to be treasured. Is so they can rebuild it. Deconstruction is so that we can start from scratch and build a new history based on the way we see the world. This is demonic. I'm just going to say it. It ain't political. This is demons, man. This is dark, evil, Baal worshiping, satanic, oldest religion in history, continuing on its merry way, trying to have absolute power over the autonomy of people. And we're watching it happen in real time. That's why I was curious about, on one hand, you were very optimistic about what the court can do when it is an originalist. But it made me think to myself, yeah, but all we have to do is lose a couple of judges who are no longer that way, and that's the end of that. It's because they don't care about the original intent. They care about getting their point of view as the law of the land. There's no integrity there. What does an American citizen do under these circumstances? We've been abandoned by DC. Clearly, they're not here anymore to help us and represent us. So it's going to be a peasants' revolt, which was how it all started in 1776. So, maybe this isn't quite exactly your ballywick. I mean, you're about religious liberties, but certainly you have to deal with the fringes of the existential threats that are necessary for you to even exist as a business.
Well, I'd say here's what the American people can do. I mean, if you look at what's going on in our country, a lot of it is very disturbing.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that's a light, that's not disturbing, that's actually really good, and that's the court. Think of the long process that it took in the legal community to fight amongst these ideas to get it to be accepted, as it should have been, that originalism is the proper approach. Not what I think, what I want. This is not some little legislature in the Supreme Court. The idea that our rights are coming more back into focus and are actually going to be protected is a huge thing for the future of our country. And I think if we stop this really dangerous thing right ahead of us right now, I think we're just at the beginning of some great opinions, a trajectory for, maybe the next 20 years, which is a good amount of time. And we just have to take care of the danger of the bloodlust right now of people who are so angry that Roe v. Wade isn't the law of the land, and so angry at the presidential immunity opinion, which is just bizarre that they're angry at that, that they want to take the court down. And I mean, they really want that Supreme Court gone. One of the bills filed just a week ago was filed that said it was going to try to take jurisdiction away from the court in certain areas. And then it was going to make the highest court of appeal for any of those cases the DC Circuit Court, which is full of liberals. And the Supreme Court wasn't going to be allowed to be the Supreme Court. Now, obviously, you can't do that. That's unconstitutional. Violates Article 3 of the Constitution. But it just shows you where they're going and where they want to go. They want that court out of there. So, and I would say, if people want info, we put up a special website just on this attack on the court. It has both information and what you can do to really help get this into the discussion so that this is forced into the public discussion. And it's called Supreme Coup, COUP, supremecoup.com. And I just think we got to focus on that for the next 2 months. If we win that, I really do feel good about the court I think maybe a couple of decades. We're going to have a court that we might not always agree with their opinions, but at least they'll be trying to get at the opinions in the right way. I think we'll have more consistency. We'll be moving back more to what the Constitution says.
And how are you instigating that premise to where that becomes the formula from that going forward? I mean, how are you making that a reality?
Well, some of it will depend upon who's president and who's in the Senate. And we can't totally know that, but there's a decent shot that, let's say you had a Trump and a Senate that's at least majority Republican. Trump was really good last time at appointing a lot of judges who, not that Trump evaluated them all, but he obviously made a commitment to say, let's put these originalist people on the court. And some people would have wished they'd have been a little stronger, some of them, like, Amy Coney Barrett or Kavanaugh, they complain they're not as strong as they want them to be. But, at the time, the Senate was like 51-49 with, senators like Collins and Flake and Murkowski. And I think people are not realistic sometimes in what they wish for. But they were, the Senate put people on the court who believe that their job, and they're trying to do their job at the best of their conscience, is to find the original meaning of the text, not to insert their own ideas of what they think should happen in America. And that is a very different thing. And that really does it takes restraint to do that, because you have all this power that you could exercise for what you think is good, which is some public policy. But that's not your job. You're not the legislature. You're a judge. Your job is to say what the law says, and the people get to change the law, not you. And so to have that for a long period of time would be so good for the country. It would be very stable. It would be very consistent, and it would really take us back to our roots. For instance, we talked a little bit earlier, like that Lemon case, right? One of the things that Lemon had been used to do is knock down a lot of these nativity scenes or menorahs, and that's all overturned now. So at Hanukkah, there could be a menorah on every county or city lawn. They can celebrate. They could do the same thing at Christmas. What a great thing for Americans of all faiths to be able to have these public celebrations and celebrate their community, instead of sort of treating it like it's some sort of pornography that has to be, pushed into the dark. It's just such a better thing for the country if that freedom can come out.
Of course.
And we're at the beginning of that, but that's just one of the opinions of many that I think are coming if we can stave off the dangerous thing that is being attempted right now.
Well, obviously I agree with you about that, because it gives us some kind of cultural heritage, a continuity. Most people celebrate Christmas. I'm talking about atheists, everybody. They don't believe in Jesus, so they don't believe in Santa, but they think, okay, we're all going to give stuff today to each other. That's a beautiful little idea. And look, we have these beautiful colors out there and all these lights. And so there's something beautiful that gave us something to celebrate together, irrespective of what religious belief system we had. Who's going to be against a time of giving, peace on earth, goodwill towards men? I mean, that's kind of a basically organic phrase that can be incorporated into any religion or non-religion, because it's a beautiful idea. But we're dealing with people that aren't beautiful. We're dealing with people's ideology that is wicked and evil and satanic. And I know some people watching this are going to say, oh, it's some religious thing. Well, I get it. You don't believe in a supernatural world. But man, if you didn't see what happened with Corona, and how something was so weird and wicked that people like Joe Rogan's and Jordan Peterson's and James Lindsay, as I mentioned, atheists and non-believers suddenly go, maybe we kind of need Jesus or something, even if we just, and they literally are saying this.
Yeah.
I mean, when the most adamant apologists for the Bible and its in crucial importance to understand the stories of the West and who we are and how we're going forward is from a non-Christian Jordan Peterson. What is that? How bad has it gotten for God that he has to find somebody that's not even one of his to at least recognize his story? Well, listen, as we get towards, wrapping this up, I would be remiss to not bring it up. I'm not trying to make it a political thing, but our culture can't, like you said at the beginning, disengage from politics, because that's the mechanism that allows our culture to thrive, to function, and to have some kind of sense of normalcy, some sense of how the machine works. So this Trump indictment thing, I mean, as a lawyer, I saw guys from Alan Dershowitz, who was a long liberal, but a classic liberal, which I'll take any day because they allow
Right.
people that disagree with them. But everybody was going, this is crazy. We've already abandoned case law, precedent, this and that. So what was your kind of take on this as far as how it was wrong? And how do you think it's going to happen when it's coming up on a sentencing or something? What is your thoughts on what this is going to look like?
It's really sad to watch. I think the American people understood what it was. It was really the criminalization of politics. It was using the courts to try to score political advantages.
Well, that worked.
Yeah. Well, I think it worked for Trump. I think a lot of people knew it was wrong. They didn't like injustice. They didn't like the abuse of the system against somebody. And I think it helped him. So who knows? I mean, the guess is that this person, if he sentences Trump, will sentence him to something, but then delay the sentencing, because he would never sentence him immediately. Because if he does, Trump will have a right to habeas corpus. And he can finally take all the shenanigans in that court.
What does that mean, habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus means, show me the body. So if you put a citizen in jail, especially if a state puts a citizen in jail, they have a right to go to federal court and say, you've got to show cause as to why you have this body in jail. And all of a sudden, the federal Constitution comes into play. Because otherwise, what Trump has to do is he has to go through that state system, which means he'd have to appeal to the state court of appeals and then the state Supreme Court. And then he can try to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. But if this guy were to put him in jail for even a second, boom, he can go right into federal court and bring up all these issues that were violated by the way they did this trial. I mean, so many violations. Really, and I just think if you look at these third world countries and why they lose financially their whole system, it's because if you don't have the rule of law, what business wants to be there?
Yeah,
I'm not bringing my business there if you could just take it the next day. I've got to have some stability, some rule of law. New York is really endangering itself with these decisions. I mean, when they're willing to sort of throw the law aside and do some of the shenanigans they've been doing because they hate Trump, everybody else has got to say, well, what if they don't like me? I don't think I want to do business in that state because I don't think it's safe. So I think you're going to see a lot of economic harm to New York just over what they've done to Trump. But I mean, there's numerous problems with his prosecution, one of which is kind of obvious. I mean, there's now immunity, and a lot of the stuff the judge mentioned to the jury is specifically under the Supreme Court decision immune from prosecution. In a normal case, the judge would have to throw it all out and start all over again at the very least. I don't think this guy's going to do it because I don't think he's been following the law all the way along. But I also don't think they're dumb enough to try to do any sentencing where they would take immediate action against Trump. That would lead to federal court and the ability to get into all the constitutional issues that they would let her delay until after the election, I'm sure.
But theoretically, you're saying that he could theoretically, if he just wanted to go completely rogue, say, you're going to jail right now, buddy. You're going to jail right
Yep.
now. He could actually do that. And then how quickly would it take for him to get out?
I
Based on
think
the
he
state
would be out very quickly, for a lot of reasons. You know, I mean, it's a very dangerous thing, this whole idea of who criminally prosecutes their political opponent. I mean, I think of Russia immediately, right? I mean, that's what I think of. The idea that we're closing in on Russia.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I mean,
that's
but
creepy.
but you know, I've said this for a long time. You know, I never wanted kind of a podcast that sits there and says, us conservatives, don't we understand it? Us Christians, we got it together. Can you believe if a conservative had tried that and we all go, yeah, we're right? And it's like, who cares? That train is long past. We understand this is a unjust system now. We have two-tiered system. We have DOJ's, FBI's literally choosing a side, politicizing the police force of the United States, the FBI, doing things that we just didn't think could take place on our watch, especially because of the Second Amendment. And so that was the one thing that is going to be a very difficult challenge, a hurdle, because every totalitarian regime, first step was to disarm their citizens. You have to. If you can't shoot back, you're doomed. And we still have that. But here's the problem with that. Nobody wants a civil war. Obviously, nobody wants that. We're trying to do it by civility. We're trying to do it by law. We're trying to do it by precedent. We're trying to do it by a give and take. But if one side has finally decided, listen, everything we do against American citizens, whether it's constitutional or not, we're never getting prosecuted. We're never going to jail. We never are punished. We never have to sacrifice. We never have to face the result of our destruction. It costs us nothing to run roughshod over fellow Americans we disagree with. Why wouldn't they keep doing it?
Yeah,
we win. We're just destroying it. So
the Justice Department has been a massive disappointment. I remember, I mean, I've worked with Justice Departments through the years on cases on opposite sides or the same side. And one of the things that was, you know, you understood how it worked. Under a Clinton, under a Bush, under a whoever, there were all these career prosecutors, and they were going to follow the law, whatever the law was, and even if they didn't like the law. And really, the first time I saw a change in that was under Obama, where he refused to defend the law, which really isn't his prerogative. I mean, imagine that an earlier Congress and an earlier president passes something into law, and then the current president decides he's not going to defend it. Excuse me? He's not the king. He doesn't have a right to do that. And we just started to degrade from there. And we really lost the role of the Justice Department that had been, that would say, hey, look, our job is to follow the law and to prosecute the law and those things. And we've lost those institutions, the trust in those institutions. And, you know, all you can do is hope and pray that that can be changed. But so far, I think Americans are more and more losing trust in the institutions that our country is built upon.
And why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? I mean, they've made it clear that they aren't trustworthy. We no longer have a news service. It's all propaganda. I mean, it is what it is. We now have social media, which never existed before. So we don't even know how to gain information because we don't know what is true, what is not true. I mean, it makes it so difficult to assess what is true and what is good and what is right, because we don't know what we're doing anymore, because everything is going sideways. What I have learned is this, you know, I said this to, I think in my last, I had Tim Barton on, you might know Tim, or
I know
or
Tim.
So you know the wall builders, of course.
Yes.
And Rick Green, you know Rick Green?
I do.
So you're there in Texas. Okay. So, well, anyways, him and I have done a comedy Constitution show for many years and stood for these types of ideas. But you know, the thing that I was curious about was, you know, if it keeps moving this direction and there is no putting the brakes on this basically despotic version of America based on how the Democrats are treating those who are not of their ilk. You know, one thing that you said earlier was, how the states' rights and the states could have a religious church if they want of any type, that you had to believe in Jesus. I mean, that was states' rights. That was whole federalist, anti-federalist issue is how much power does the federal government have and how much do the states have their own basically country to run as they wish, as long as they're not breaching the Constitution in general. And some of them said they wouldn't even sign the Constitution if they couldn't secede because they didn't want them to be told what to, Americans have a long line of not wanting to be told what to do by
Yeah.
another entity. And that started the Revolutionary War. But, something happened, though, ironically, with the Roe overturning, is that it made some states double down. Oh yeah, well then I'll show you what it is. We're going to make it illegal for you to make it illegal to have an abortion in our state. I mean, so it kind of unfortunately showed the beauty of the state rights is that they did exactly what we discussed. We decided in our state, we're going to let you have drugs. Well, that just got overturned in Oregon. That failure of that said we're not going to criminalize drugs. They just said, okay, this isn't working. You think?
Yeah.
You needed a test? So that's why I said they don't even seem to know how to think, these people, because it's clear that they're not making decisions based on any kind of logic or reason or anything along that line. But it makes one wonder, if people will, as they're doing, flee the blue states, come to the red states, and basically we have two Americas. We have blue state America by choice and red state America by choice. We're still kind of a constitutional republic. We're still kind of together, but we have very different points of view of how we see each other. So the only problem would be if the federal government takes absolute control and becomes a martial law or something and then invades the red states. So again, we're talking about the worst case scenario, but what do you think in the end a citizen can do if they feel like we've run out of options? They're either going to just take it, and I guess I'm a slave now, or they're going to defend themselves. Is there anything we can do to stave off a militia and another civil war, but this time the real deal? Because clearly that is not the direction we want to go. There's no turning back once you go there.
Yeah, we obviously need to do everything we can within the system and pray that we get a turnaround. And in fact, before I forget, I would just encourage everybody, a couple of resources we have that they might want to use. One is, of course, I mentioned the supremecoup.com. People need to know that this battle is going on right now, because 6 months from now, they don't want to be surprised and have the country be over. The other thing, though, we do, it's real simple. If you go to our main website, which is First Liberty, spell it out, firstliberty.org, and then /elections. We've got an elections page that tells churches, a lot of them are scared to talk about the elections. And we say, no, you've got all this freedom. Yeah. Here's what the law says. And we just lay it out for them real simply to hopefully free them up to do the things that churches should want to do. Register people to vote. Yeah, you have a right to do that. Talk about the issues in the elections. Absolutely. You can even invite the candidates if you want to. Yeah. And if just one side shows up, you've done your duty.
And when they tell you that we're going to take your 501c3, what does the church tell them?
Well, the church could tell them a lot of things. I mean, we've had those, every IRS case we've had with the church that said that, they've run screaming as soon as we sent them a legal brief. The reality is that under the IRS code, a church is a nonprofit, tax-exempt organization if it's a church, period. So, let's say some group said, oh, we're going to take away your 501c3 status. Well, okay, the moment you take it away, the next moment I'm still a church and I'm tax-exempt. There's been cases on this that say, really, it's just a semantical game. They're still, if they're a church, they're tax-exempt. So there's really nothing to be scared of. There's a lot of fear that's based upon nothing, but we at least lay out the law to try to calm those fears. But we also have at that same firstliberty.org/elections. Why should a Christian vote? How does the court affect your vote? We've got a page on that. here's just a basic comparison between, and it's totally objective, between Trump and Harris on, life, religious liberty. I mean, justices at the Supreme Court. I mean, Trump nominated Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett and Gorsuch. Harris voted against all three, right? So you can pick your side, but at least you know where people stand on those things. So we're going to have commercials too. We're working on them right now. They're almost done. They just try to connect, because so many Christians, I think very poorly about how they should be making their decision in an election. They get fooled into thinking it's about whether they like a candidate. And that's really completely irrelevant. The question is, what is the candidate going to do? What is it going to do for you, for your children, for your grandchildren, for the things you believe in? What kind of society, what kind of future, what kind of freedoms? Those are the things you look for, not whether you like the candidate. And I think the media loves to get us kind of fuzzed up over that. And, would you really not vote for a candidate because, well, I don't like the candidate and I'm willing to give up the rule of law. I'm willing to give up the Supreme Court. I'm willing to give up, would you really give away your freedoms because you're uncomfortable with both of the candidates as human beings? I just think that's really poor. I think the reason you look at a person's character for office normally is because you want to make sure that they will do what they say they're going to do. So you want to know that if they're saying they're running on this, can I trust them? I don't think we have that issue with the two candidates. I mean, they've got a long history. We know exactly what they'll do. So really, it's not about, the candidates like for president. It's about what they'll do. And that's how you really should analyze it. And so we try to do that with some of these ads, not going, just real simple things, showing the Supreme Court how it's constructed and how the Senate and the president really determine those justices. And then at the end, they show somebody pulling a lever saying, you're the one who controls the Supreme Court. You are when you vote. When you vote for that senator, when you vote for that president, you're picking those. So that should be the way they're thinking, not, well, I don't like their TV commercials better than the other person or something along those sides. And I think the media intentionally likes to force people into the personality versus the issues and things that affect people's lives.
Well, and let me ask you one last question for my subscribers who get a special answer for those who are part of the Militia of the Mind and the Mighty 10,000. But it kind of leads up to a perfect synopsis of what you just said. I did notice during Corona, when it exposed everything, and that, who knows who's running the world. Do you believe the elections were legitimate? Now, I don't want to get any hot water. I don't know if it matters. I don't know why it would. Hey, guys, I'm interrupting my own interview. If you want the answer that you haven't heard yet, go to bradstine.com and join one of the 3 tiers. It is the Militia of the Mind, it is the Warrior level, or it is the Special Forces. And then you'll get all kinds of special content and bonus answers to make you smarter than you could ever imagine. Go there now, jump on and join the Mighty 10,000. But you know what? I just want to say thank you to Kelly Shackelford and the First Liberty Institute, folks. We're going to have their links. You need to give. These are people, I'm guessing, do it pro bono. So that means somebody's got to pay them, and they should be paid, because what's more important than people taking care of our religious liberties and our freedoms and our First Amendment rights? And as a comic, I know I appreciate it, because I want to keep speaking my mind and making people unhappy and uncomfortable, because that's what comedy can do well. But thank you for the hard work. Thank you for putting yourself on, at the tip of the spear when it comes to what is necessary for this nation to remain. I pray for a third great awakening. I don't know. Maybe God is bringing the hammer down like he did Israel when they decided to worship idols instead of his commandments. But I believe as long as there's righteous men and women on this nation, and we pray and believe that he will show us mercy. But we have
Amen.
to become disciples, not Christians. We got to be disciples. We have to be all in, or this
Yep.
isn't going to work. God is not playing games anymore. He said, get in or get out. Folks, remember, if they come up to you ever and say you are politically incorrect, always say thank you for the compliment. That's the last thing you want to be, is politically correct. You want to be a free speaker. And if you're a Christian, you're the last truth teller on earth. This is God's comic. Brad Stine with Brad Stine Has Issues. And I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do, which is what? Putting the woke back to sleep. I will see you next Monday. Thanks.